You went to Harvard.
Guys, forget about it. I went to Harvard. So I wish I did not. I had a strong intuition that the high valuation from VC was off. But I didn't know how to do because as a founder, I face a real dilemma. If I raise a high valuation, I get a lot of money, so I never worry about runway, which right now actually I am. We're very cheap as a company.
So I understand that MegaETH Testnet is coming out in February. Do you have any message for us, for builders who are planning to try things out?
Welcome to the Deco podcast, where we bring you stories from founders and investors in Web3. Before we get started, this is not a financial or legal advice. It's just a conversation about things we find interesting in Web3. Views expressed are our own personal opinions. Deco members or guests appearing on the show may have positions on assets they talk about.
Hello. Welcome to another episode. I'm super pumped and excited for this one. We have with us Brother Bing, aka Shuyao. She is the co-founder of MegaETH, and she also does everything that is not technical at MegaETH. She used to work at Consensus. She has spent her time in Africa. She has spent her time in eastern part of the world, and we'll probably get to learn a lot about the differences, etc., in cultural differences and how they permeate into crypto. And obviously talk a lot about MegaETH and scaling Ethereum and all the good stuff. Right. So welcome to the show.
Hey guys, hello Sarah, also hello Sargams, the amazing editor. Glad to be here. Excited to share stories. My name is Brother Bing. You can also call me Shuyao, Da Bing, Bing Bing. I am the smallest brain in the MegaETH team. That's why I handle business. My GigaBrain co-founders actually produce the chain.
Awesome. So typically we start with what people used to do before crypto, but since you've already spent some time in crypto, let's start with what your journey has been until MegaETH and what led you to start MegaETH.
Absolutely, yeah. So I joined crypto in 2017, as a lot of people who joined during the ICO boom, right? And my story was probably slightly different from others. I was born and raised in China, then went to the States for college. And then when I was in the US, there was this thing about American dream, and every Chinese would want to find a really good job and stay in the US. I'm old, so it was like 14 years ago. I had a return offer to be a consultant in one of the big tech companies. But I thought, oh my God, this whole American dream is to turn people into an NPC. Because you can kind of like see the end of your life. My sister actually happened to migrate to the States about 20 years ago, and she went to U Chicago. She went to Yale, like extremely highly educated. But I saw her living this like a very typical upper middle class life.
You went to Harvard.
It's quite shameful, so I don't mention the Harvard part. Like,
Oh.
not good. Guys, forget about it. I went to Harvard. So I wish I did not. Anyone who's listening who wants to go to business school, please DM me on Twitter. I will try my best to persuade you not to. So yeah, so this whole I had this hunch, right? American dream is to make you an NPC. So I didn't want to stay in the US. And then I was looking at the world map. I was like, where can I go? So I was born and raised in Asia. During college, I was lucky enough to study and work a little bit in Europe, in Denmark, and also in India. Internet Infosys, actually, way back in 2012. I lived in Bangalore, so I know a lot about Indian food. So, and then I was like, okay, where else can I go, right? I just stared at the world map. I remember I talked to myself. I was like, Latin America would be super interesting. But God damn it, I don't speak the language. I don't speak Spanish, nor do I speak Portuguese. So can't do that. And I was like, okay, maybe Australia. But then I was like, hang up, Australia is for retirement life. So not a good idea either. So I looked at Africa and I was like, okay, I could do Africa. So I said to my company, I was like, you know what? I don't want to stay in the US. They were going to place me in New York. And I said, I want to go to Africa. And they were so happy. They're like, oh my God, finally, a young person who want to go to Africa. Because normally they have to persuade someone who's really old and to carry their entire family to relocate to Africa, which is very expensive, right? So they have to pay for the children's school, they have to pay for extra driver and all of that expense. But they can pay me dirt cheap. And I'm like happily going to Africa. So I went to Nigeria, spent 2 years there. I really just learned about how the rest of the world worked, right? And I had this conclusion that poverty is man-made because I experienced like deflation, I experienced like skyrocket, like domestic goods and price and all of that. And that's also the time when my multinational friends were actually using Bitcoin as a rail to get money out of Africa. So that was my first forte into crypto. And then 2017 happened. I was like, oh my God, Ethereum, world computer. Like everyone could be Steve Jobs, right? I left my traditional tech company and then joined Consensus. And I ended up staying there for many years. And I really liked it. I liked it because, nowadays people complain about meme coins and financial nihilism. And, some people are like, oh, wow, there's no hope in our industry. Like Trump rip a coin, Melanie rip a coin. Like, what is there for, right? But back in 2017, it was techno optimism. It was like you put everything on chain. This thing's gonna change the world. And I wish people can experience the 2070 optimism. And people were talking about global coordination, slaying the Moloch. It's just a better future, right? So I experienced a lot of that, which is why I think it impacted me till today. When I see financial nihilism, I'm like, fuck no, right? Like there's still a lot of good things happening in crypto, and that's why the builders are here. So I experienced a lot of that from 2017, 2020, DeFi summer and all of that. So I saw the rise of a bunch of applications, also the rise of wallets, infrastructure providers. But I've also actually seen a lot of products that got sunset. So 2017, there were a lot of projects that were like going to transform how, people talk about, I'm in Korea right now, right? So IP, the story protocol is quite a big deal here because the founder is Korean. But back then in 2017, like putting IP on chain was a huge deal. But none of the product worked back then. But now things seems to be, getting back on the right track. So, but I saw a bunch of products that got product market fit, and also see a bunch of products just sunset. So saw a bunch of things, worked at Consensus. I did my business school, which I like deeply regret. And then what pushed me to MegaETH was really my co-founders. I read their white paper, and it was the most elegant white paper I've ever read. And I've read a lot of white paper, and I can go a bit deeper more into it. But my life philosophy has always been I want to be the dumbest person in the room. And I really think at MegaETH, I'm the dumbest person.
Awesome. I remember I was not into crypto full time, but I had a friend who, like, bro, they are going to put Uber on blockchain and all of those things, right? So, yeah, fun times, 2017. I can attest to that, although I was not full time. But yeah, you said that you can go a little bit deep into the white paper. So, I would definitely want you to tell us what was it that, drew you towards it.
Absolutely. So when I was at Consensus, I actually worked with all the major protocols. And it's not just Ethereum, right? I want to, as a global head of BD, I had to understand what's happening in the crypto space. And I think that's the most important skill set for anyone who's doing business development marketing. You must be ahead of the curve. You must know things happening before they blow out. So a lot of my job back in 2020, 21, when Ethereum hit the scaling limit, was to look at all the blockchains. So, I helped Consensus to close a bunch of deals with the layer two. So I was looking at them. But in the meantime, I was also looking at a bunch of layer ones. So I went to the first Solana breakpoint. I don't know about how many people went there. It was electrifying, right? So it was height of the FTX, and I remember I went to the conference, and then someone was launching a own fork on Solana. And I was like, I went to a coffee shop but did nothing, but I just aped into the pool. So like I saw the amount of developer mind share, like things happening on Solana. I also went to the first Avalanche Summit in Barcelona. So I saw all the chains. I also obviously worked with Optimism, Arbitrum. I led consensus investment into ZK Sync as well. So looked into all the zero knowledge proof layer twos. But after 2 or 3 years, looking at the layer two scaling roadmap, but also looking at the layer one scaling technology, right? I reached the conclusion that none of them worked. The way that layer two scale right now do not work because they don't tackle the fundamental performance bottleneck of the Ethereum layer two blockchain, which is the execution environment, right? Which boils down to the Merkle Patricia tree. And for layer one, no matter how fast they are right now, they are not scalable in terms of a latency perspective because as a layer one, you are bottlenecked by consensus. And consensus makes your blockchain very slow. And these are the two problems that MegaETH solved in that white paper. And that touches down to the MegaETH, the special architect, right? Which is we get rid of consensus. So we're always going to be faster than layer one. But more importantly, we completely rewrote the state trade, the market position. We got rid of it. And that's how we, 100x the performance as a layer two. And that's what really wowed me. And I remember talking to myself, I was like, how the hell did no one actually come up with it? Because it was just so obvious from hindsight. And then I realized that there are two reasons. I think the first one is Ethereum people love decentralization, right? And everyone who's building layer two has to be like, okay, how do I decentralize sequencer? But the point of being a layer two is you don't need to decentralize sequencer because you're using layer one as a security guarantee, right? So what's the fucking point? But everyone was like, okay, we have to decentralize. So I think that really, how does it constrain people's imagination? And I think the second reason was my co-founders, especially Elon, like our CEO. He did not come from crypto. He was doing low latency data center compute at Stanford, right? His world is about how to build machine that scales in nanoseconds. It's not even millisecond. So when he came to blockchain, he's like, you guys are all like kind of stupid. The easiest way is to rewrite the data structure, right? So he spent 6 months basically measuring EVM performance. And there is a fantastic presentation talk I recommend everyone to go listen, where he basically go into data and be like, okay, I spent 6 months measure EVM performance, and this is exactly what the bottleneck is. And let me tell you, to address the bottleneck, this is how we come up with solution, right? So I think this idea of like not being constrained by the blockchain researchers' mentality allowed him to really think out of the box and to address the problem from first principle. So these are the reason I think when I saw the white paper, it solved a lot of problems I kind of was asking myself, like none of the blockchain worked. And the second one was that the solution that Elon came up with really made sense.
Right. So I think there are multiple directions. I mean, there were pop ups in my head, but I'll stick with this. I want to double click a little on the consensus bit that you mentioned, right? That because when there are multiple nodes and at least the majority of them need to come together and decide that, okay, this is the order or whatever that they need to agree upon. That is what is the overhead that takes time, right? So, but again, like blockchains need to have consensus, right? So someone has to do it. If MegaETH is not doing it, it has to be happening somewhere. So, can you just tell us a little bit more about how all of that is happening?
Absolutely. So from MegaETH's perspective, we don't have consensus. So who's doing consensus? It's our beloved Ethereum, right? So we outsource consensus to Ethereum. And because Ethereum is decentralized, so the Ethereum consensus, we believe, is actually a lot more secure than a random layer one, who has like some servers in the basement of the founder.
10 DPoS nodes.
And so yeah, it's, many such cases, many such cases. But now let's talk about layer one consensus, right? There are many beautiful layer one blockchain. I'm someone who believes that there are multiple blockchain that can succeed. I'm obviously want my gate to succeed, but I think the consensus algorithm of Solana is very interesting, right? So you have a local leader that's gonna select what's the next transaction, the rest follow, right? So as consensus, but it's like a weak consensus, which is why Solana is so fast. And you also have the Aptos and Sui, they also have their own independent consensus algorithm, which is also beautiful, right? Like I think Aptos and Sui has like 6 milliseconds, 600 millisecond latency. So they're all beautiful events in their own way, but again, they still have to do consensus. The moment you have to do consensus, you cause latency. So if you are someone who's performance maxi, like what MegaETH does, you want to get rid of consensus. So my view in life, my philosophy is don't mid-curve life, right? So to me, a blockchain, if you are trying to be decentralized and perform at the same time, you're kind of mid-curving it. And I think what I'm trying not to mid-curve is, MegaETH is just not decentralized, but we're fucking good at performance. Or you can be like Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Transaction just doesn't go through. The other day, I was trying to unwind some of my position on Pando on layer one. It cost me $107. My heart bleed. It was just like so bad. But I understand, okay, like there's a cost to Ethereum's decentralization. And that's why, MegaETH choose to settle on Ethereum. And I think the worst is to try to achieve both and you get nothing.
Absolutely. One more thing that you mentioned was MegaETH is not decentralized. Like there is one sequencer, and it is extremely good at what it does, and it does it really fast, right? But a question then is, you also said that Ethereum is secure, like that is outsourced to Ethereum, right? So is there, I mean, whether there is an escape hatch or whatever, like if something goes wrong with MegaETH, how does Ethereum take over? Like that is something I would want you to unpack.
Absolutely. So decentralization is a means to an end. After 6 and 7 years in crypto, we can all realize that the word decentralization is cursed.
Yep.
If I have to, I would prefer not to use the word. I think what really we care about is real-time censorship and liveness. We need the Ethereum liveness in order to prove the correctness of the MegaETH transaction. So what happens for us is, the typical rollup structure, your ETH or MegaETH, you will not lose them, right? Because you have the escape hash from Ethereum. So I think that's the basic security guarantee from Ethereum. And obviously, like there are now people talking about native rollup, based rollup, so you can inherit more security from Ethereum. So I think the general trend of the modular ecosystem is, so right now the minimum censorship resistance is escape hatch, but we can probably do more. But I think to us at the end of the day is we are not decentralized doesn't mean like, okay, we're just in basement someone's server. I think we don't have real-time censorship resistance. Our censorship resistance will come, but it's gonna be after we go settle back on Ethereum and you get the correctness from Ethereum, right? But it would not have the moment you get on a transaction, that's just like censorship resistant. But even, sometimes I talk to our CTO, Lei, he said, even Ethereum doesn't have real-time censorship resistant. Because Ethereum also has to process block, right? So it's very much a debate of how censorship resistant you are and how decentralized you are. And for now, we are happy with the state we are in because we think that a lot of transactions don't require real-time censorship resistance, right? People, when I think about what blockchain is for, blockchain is to connect different databases. And when you connect different databases, you can explore capital efficiency, you can create a new market, you can create social graph. And that's where you create new use cases. You don't really need a decentralized blockchain for when World War III happens, right? If World War III happened, like let's all just go to Ethereum Bitcoin. You don't have to come to Mega. But for a lot of the use cases we're targeting, which I know we're going to talk a bit about it, is the consumer use cases. They don't need to be on Ethereum, right? They could just be on a fast blockchain like MegaETH.
Absolutely. I'm curious about what is the difference in MegaETH's approach compared to what already exists, like whether there are optimistic rollups or ZK rollups, or maybe something that doesn't exist yet, something like a monad, where they also talk of a parallel execution in EVM compatible manner. So yeah, like let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I often say that the best part of MegaETH is we don't try to reinvent the wheel, right? We don't try to create what other people have done the best already. So our bread and butter, right, our secret weapon is our execution environment. It's our sequencer. No one is ever going to copy that from us. That's really the crown jewel moment. But the rest of the MegaETH architecture, we take whatever other people have done the best, right? So we take Ethereum does the best with settlement and security. Yeah, we're gonna settle on Ethereum. EigenDAI is the fastest data availability layer. We're gonna use EigenDAI. And by the way, a fun fact, my co-founder Lei actually co-wrote the EigenDAI white paper. So he actually understands DA probably more than a lot of the DA people themselves.
People.
Yeah, and then execution environment is our own bread and butter. So now you're asking the question of, are we using optimistic proof or ZK proof? The answer is we're not agnostic. We're gonna do what's the best for our developers, which is fast, cheap transaction. So for now, optimistic fraud proof is faster and cheaper. So we're gonna use an optimistic prover node. But we are extremely bullish on ZK fraud proof, and we're talking to a lot of ZK fraud proof companies and just trying to incorporate them into our architecture. So now let's talk about parallelization, right?
Yeah.
Parallelization is important, but it's not a make or break for any blockchain. If we look at what Monad does, Monad is using the Aptos parallelization block STM algorithm. So we are actually using our own parallelization. It's very much homegrown. We're very proud of it. So the parallelization will probably 5x to 10x our performance. But that's not the fundamental of why Mega is performant. Right? Mega is performant because we have this centralized rotational sequencer design, and because of a data structure, it's not parallelization. If you ask Monad, parallelization is important to them, but I think it's a Monad DB, right? That's their bread and butter. So yeah. So I think what I want the audience to take away is I think we're entering a new phase of building a blockchain. And this is how me as a non-technical person think about it. I think phase one was the bundling of different blockchain services all together, right? So that's why you have layer one that has consensus, data availability. And the next stage is, people call it modular, which is what Celestia champion. We think that MegaETH demonstrate the third phase, which is a heterogeneous network, right? Every aspect of MegaETH is so specialized. That's how you get the best of everything, right? That's why our architecture can leverage the hardware. Like people say MegaETH is more similar to Solana than Ethereum layer 2 because we like vertical scaling, right? We're using the hardware, we're using the in-memory compute and all of that. So we believe the next generation of blockchain will all look like MegaETH, right? Extremely heterogeneous, extremely specialized. You take the component of what other people have done the best, you put them together, and you have an extremely performant layer without sacrificing censorship resistance. Because again, we're using Ethereum.
That's fair. I still want you to drive that point home where what is it about the sequencer that, compared to rest of the rollups, MegaETH is already probably 100 or 1,000x faster.
Yeah. The bottleneck of the current existing EVM sequencer is a Merkle Patricia tree.
Okay.
Yeah, if you read Elon's performance benchmark, which he worked on for 6 months, it is Merkle Patricia tree. So what MegaETH did is we completely got rid of it. So we wrote our own state tree.
Okay. Now it's a little bit more clear than what it was before. All right. I mean, MegaETH wants to do, I think, 100,000 PPS. Is that the claim at the moment? Okay. So let's talk applications, right? I mean, you alluded to it. Currently, I don't think any blockchain has an application that requires, obviously, it's a yin and yang thing. I mean, because the blockchains are not there, we don't have those kind of applications. And probably because there is no inherent or dire need of those applications. That's why blockchains are not there yet. But yeah, what kind of applications will we see that require like censorship resistance and 100,000 TPS?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think anything has to do with money, you want censorship resistance, right? Like no one wants to lose their funds. So again, that's the beauty of using Ethereum, really. I would not put my money on any layer one. I think who knows what's gonna happen with the nodes, right? In terms of application, I mean, we saw when Trump coin launched, Solana TPS reached out to 3,000 TPS. So my view has been, it's not about the type of use cases, it's just whether the use cases are good enough. Like you have users and liquidity income. And I think the Trump coin demonstrated that Solana has really made it, right? Like it has processed more TPS than any other chain combined. So from our perspective, it's the type of use cases that I'm very bullish on. And I can, name a few categories that people are familiar with, but there are a few like I'm interested in. The first one is the autonomous world thesis. So I think about autonomous world very different from game. People say like, oh, fully on-chain game. I think that's bullshit. I think autonomous world as a very big gamified DeFi experiment. And that's where it requires censorship resistance, right? You need money to be on it. And I think autonomous world is more like native to crypto to have fun. So you can incorporate meme coins into it. You can have like different gaming mechanism. So we have someone who's building AWE. It's literally called Autonomous World Engine. It allows anyone to spin up a little game, right? So for example, instead of just buying Pop Dog Fun, where you just clicking button, you can have a little character that's jumping somewhere and the coins are little blocks falling from the sky. And every time you touch the block, you're buying some money in it, right? So I think these are like crypto native games that people will have fun. And then, but more importantly, you're kind of like growing the on-chain economy. And that's what I think is the end game of any blockchain ecosystem, right? You want more liquidity and you want more users, so you want people to have fun. The second part is I'm a big fan of DeepIn. I know it's like kind of jaded as a category. One project that I'm super interested in is called Hop. They're building a real-time VPN. I have been a VPN user since I was 17 years old, which is like 17 years ago, right? I'm old. As someone who grew up in China, I've just been using VPN my entire life. But actually, the top 6 VPNs in the world are controlled by 2 conglomerates, and they have been sued by nation state for stealing their data. So I think VPN is a natural use cases, especially for crypto natives. When we're traveling everywhere and we have we need access to all different type of applications. And a VPN on MegaETH is only possible on MegaETH because of latency. Right? So if you are using a layer one that has 1 second block time and you have to hop your transaction between different nodes, you're fucked. It's like really only possible on MegaETH. So I'm very excited about DeepIn. And I think DeepIn is where people really become part of the network. And I think there's something empowering and beautiful about it. So if any of the audience you're building in a DP category, please message me. I'm like really exploring in this space. I think the last category is social, but in a broader sense of application that's providing emotional value. What do I mean by that? Like no one wants to use their banking apps. I go crazy when I live in the Middle East, right? Every time I go on my bags, I want to hang my head on a watch so bad. But when I go on my Instagram, I love it. And in fact, I deleted Instagram on my phone because it's so addictive. And I think the next crypto application will be something like Instagram, right? So for example, we have an application called Noise. What Noise does, it allows you to trade attention. So you can trade things like trend, right? What's going to be a popular jean color next year? I think that's going to be a breakout case for crypto. Like 13-year-old kid love talking about what's trendy to wear next year rather than, what's the next coin, right? Like people don't do that. And then we have another project called Sweep. They allow streamers to place bets and people to like bet on streamers' behavior, right? So these are like little crypto native behavior you can embed in consumer application. So yeah, overall, these are what I'm interested in. Interest in autonomous world, interest in deeping, interest in application that provides emotional value.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Trump coin, right? So first, I mean, a lot of people think that is bullshit and whatever, but I read a stat somewhere that 60% of the people who interacted with Trump coin were the first time blockchain users. So that's impressive, right? I mean, and I think it has like a million holders. So onboarding like 500,000 new users to blockchains, I think that is an impressive feat in itself. And no other blockchain, at least at the moment, can do that. I take a contrasting example of anime. It's Azuki's,
Yeah.
I think, governance token or whatever. When it launched on Arbitrum, I think the gas spiked to $6 or whatever. I mean, yeah, $6 is not much compared to what we see on Ethereum when there is heavy traffic. But still, like $6 should be unacceptable. And it's not just that. I mean, Arbitrum doesn't have localized fee markets where it is affecting only anime or and applications related to that. Everyone suffers. Like even if I have to make
Mm.
a regular DeFi transfer, like even I suffer. And yeah, like about the ecosystem, right? I mean, you're right that people use applications, they don't care about the chain. And there's only so long that you can play these token games, like one after another, right? And like after Trump, there is wine and we ape into wine, and then there is next and whatever. I mean,
I would push back on one thing. People don't care about chain, but people care about the underlying assets, right? People care about
yeah,
soul,
yeah,
and then people care about
yeah.
art. So it's going in a different direction. But over the new year, I started reading a book about Western civilization. I like reading history books. And then, people often compare blockchain as cities. Like Ethereum is New York City, right? It kind of makes sense. But I really think there's a parallel between blockchain and civilization. Why? Because cities are static. Right? You are really constrained by the physical location. But civilization, especially if you look at Asian civilization, right? The beauty of it is commerce and it's trade. And it's growing the economy by going to different places. And it's by conquering, oftentimes very bloody, and it's about cultural pollination and all of that. So I started to think like, people don't care about the chain. Yes, we can always say that. But a chain that has its unique culture, identity, and has this idea of conquering, of growing economy, I think is extremely addictive and beautiful. I think this is where like sometimes I think MegaETH is different from Ethereum, right? And I think Ethereum as a very decentralized neutral protocol is kind and gentle. Something I love about it is infinite garden, right? But you do have something like MegaETH, right? That's a lot more aggressive. And I often joke like MegaETH is the Bronze Age mentality, right? We love to grow. Like growth to me is beautiful. And then, but to me, growth is not about growing within the physical limit. I want MegaETH to be a civilization. Like, I want to be a mega civilization. Right? We're gonna grow via DeFi. We're gonna allow people to have fun. We're gonna have different religions coming up. We're gonna have trade. We're gonna have multiple currencies. So yeah, I think for the next year, I wanted to grow a civilization for MegaETH.
That's extremely interesting. Like, okay, I want to double click on this now. That I mean, I had other things, but I think this is a direction that we can pick. If we were comparing civilizations that analogies related to that, like chain analogies, like how would you map Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana to different civilizations? Do you have something like that?
I don't. I think about Bitcoin really as a religion. at this point, and I think Bitcoin can conquer any civilization. And that's just, and I
It's
think the
beyond.
topic is beyond it. If you're not a Bitcoiner, it's just difficult to survive in crypto. And the longer you stay in crypto, I bet the more
You come to appreciate.
you come to Bitcoin. Yeah. Let me think about what works for Ethereum. Oh, it's gotta be dangerous.
Go for it.
It's gonna sound really bad, but there's a bit of resemblance to China, right? Like thousands of years of dynasty. There is a principle for Confucianism, which is there's principle, there's diligence, there's a bunch of like really good principles. But if you look at the fall of the old Chinese dynasty, right, it is complacency, which is, you're very much, you own a lot of resources, right? And then you have a lot of legitimacy. So I think there's a bit of like a danger over there. But in the meantime, the Chinese culture spread all over, right? Like I'm in Korea right now. Actually, Korean didn't have their own vocabulary until 200 years ago. Their written languages in Chinese until they invented their own written, same as Japan. Right? So the Chinese civilization has spread all over Asia.
Right.
So it has its own conquering mentality. And a lot of the Confucianism actually survive and thrive more probably in these countries than in mainland China these days. So I think, yeah, that could be an interesting analogy. And even like if you go to America, right, a lot of the Chinese mentality and culture still survive in Manhattan. So you have this like diaspora here and there, and it will never die, right? And I think we'll probably see a revival of Chinese culture here and there. Something I found very interesting is like the traditional Chinese medicine. When I was in the US, I get a lot of Instagram ads about people selling traditional Chinese medicine. And I look at them, I'm like, yo, dude, like I grew up like eating this. They cost like 1 cent, but you can sell them for $10, right?
Right.
Western. So you have a bit of a revival here and there. And I don't know what MegaETH civilization would look like, but what I'm hoping is there's gonna be some essence that's gonna stay no matter where people are. Like again, I think this idea of breaking off the physical boundary, you have people who carry the mission, and you have people who growing it via trading. I think that's something beautiful.
About complacency, right? Complacency in Ethereum. I was talking to Kunal from Messeri a couple of days ago, and we were chatting like Bitcoin, ETH, and like how the markets are doing and so on. And we talked about complacency, and I was telling him that if Ethereum takes more opinionated approach to scaling, or something that resembles Ethereum takes a heavily opinionated approach towards scaling, I would want to bet on it. And that is when we started discussing MegaETH, and like we said that we are looking forward to the launch. So I think Kyle Sabani had articulated it really well. Like he was saying that Ethereum is in peacetime mode. And if it has to change and if it has to start competing with Solana and the likes, it has to probably get to wartime mode. And in my head, that is like being more opinionated about what you want to achieve. And probably L2s are the way to go, right? And something like a MegaETH is the way to go. So I really hope for Ethereum that it happens because of all the things you also mentioned, that it is nice and people are nice, and all the culture, Ethereum culture that has permeated in the last 4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah, so I would just add one more thing here and then we can move on is I think in one day Ethereum Foundation or Ethereum functions like Solana, I'm out. It's just not what I signed up for. I think Solana function like a Silicon Valley company.
Right.
Why I'm in crypto, right? I think MegaETH can function like a company or some other layer too. But Ethereum Foundation is, this idea of co-building together, of credible neutrality, which I know is extremely difficult to get to. It's beautiful and it's difficult. And I think it's something you should applaud to. And the sense of urgency, I think, is it's fixable, right? But
Yeah,
if
it
one
is.
day Ethereum loses the infinite garden or the decentralization ethos, is fucked. Like I'm out. I don't know. I'll become a Bitcoin max. I'm not gonna build. Yeah. So I just hope Ethereum never changes. I think Ethereum should improve. But yeah, please don't change.
Please do. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, about Chinese culture, right? I also want to ask you about what kind of impact does China have on crypto markets? Like, because, from outside perspective, a lot of times when the headlines are, okay, China is banning this, that, it's pretty much like India, right? And news is misinterpreted by the market. So we don't really understand what is actually going on. What kind of applications do people want to use? How do they invest? And take mining, for example, right? I think in general, people in this part of the world are extremely calculated. They understand like profit and operating profit like very quickly. and opportunities, because we had to fight for resources, like because of huge population, whether that is India or China. That is ingrained in us that whenever there is even slight opportunity, there will be a lot of people rushing towards it. And I think mining is a great example of that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think the Chinese crypto ecosystem is very complicated and sophisticated. I think there are a few groups, right? You do have the retails who are extremely sharp. Right? They are
Mm.
literally aping on Solana shitcoins all the time. And I suspect a lot of the Trump volume come from China. And they're
Okay.
using this product called GMGN. Guys, you guys should
Right,
check out. It's a very
right,
good
right.
tool to use. So the traders, I think the retails will just do what retail does. I think it's universal. So that's first group, right? I think the second group in terms of builders, I think there are really good Chinese builders. And Chinese builders are really good at building product that's focusing on operations and growth. So that's why Chinese are very good at centralized exchanges because operation heavy. Okay. And similar with like ByteDance, right? ByteDance had TikTok. It's ops heavy. So China has like centralized exchanges. But I also think there's a bunch of like cypherpunk builders in China. I remember early days when Farcaster came, there are so many enthusiastic Chinese builders who want to build decentralized social. And that's because, that's kind of needed in China. Right? So I think there's like a lot of goodwill of Chinese builders. They struggle to get to Western audiences because of messaging and language barrier, which I think a lot of international builders face. But I think that part of Chinese builders are quite neglected. And the one who can actually speak good English, like Stepan, right? They made a huge win because they combine the knowledge of building product, they know how to run girls, and they speak English. They get the message across. So I think that's the builders category. I think the third category is actually researchers. I love checking out crypto Twitter, the Chinese crypto Twitter circle, because they give me insights I can never see in the Western media, right? The way that Chinese audience analyze liquidity, analyze technology, especially like, okay, oh, when you have this piece of technology, so what, right? I think the Chinese researchers give a very good read on this than a lot of the Western audience. So I think in summary, extremely diverse, extremely vibrant. I think Chinese will never leave crypto just because where the country stands. I wish there are more Chinese founders who can have a bigger audience with the global crypto scene, but I think that's just gonna take time. In the meantime, Chinese traders will rule. Any project, if you want to make a dent, you probably need to hire someone who's very good at knowing the Chinese community.
Fair enough. Okay, in terms of like whether that is marketing or community building, I've realized that making sure that your early community becomes rich as the product or chain or whatever it is that grows is perhaps the best way to keep the community together, at least in crypto, right? And to that, I think you guys have done an exceptional job of allowing people to invest at a cheaper valuation, like to be honest. Because a project of this scale or something that we have not seen before could have easily raised at, I don't know, whatever 10-figure valuation. You take your pick, right? And I'm pretty sure you had offers from VCs, but you chose to go the eco way and at least allowed a few smaller participants to invest at a pretty lower valuation. Because like Larry was there on the podcast and he was also talking about it. Like most of the tokens, VC rounds are done at a billion or plus. By the time the token launches in public markets, it is at 5 billion, and it is a dump fest on whoever is buying, trying to buy new, right? And then the token is down only, and then the project kind of not becomes obsolete, but it becomes at least irrelevant as far as the market is concerned. Like you will have huge volume days in the first week or so, and then just people move on to the next best thing. So I want to understand how the team convinced, or whose idea was it? How did you guys make sure that okay, this is the way you go?
Yeah, so we've been talking to Kobe since actually July last year. Kobe was on my cap table as well. And then I had a very strong intuition, I would say, because I can't lie to the audience like, oh, I knew this all along, right? It was just not true. I had a strong intuition that the high valuation from VC was off, but I didn't know how to do because as a founder, I face a real dilemma. If I raise a high valuation, I get a lot of money, so I never worry about runway. Which right now, actually, I am like we're very cheap as a company. And second one is, it create an artificial price floor for retail, right? So that's why people are like, oh yeah, you should definitely raise the big round from VC. But yeah, so it was really hard. I didn't know the answer. So I cannot lie to people like I knew this all the way. I think what really triggered me to make the decision was I saw what happened with Hyperliquid. And I think that was a beautiful way to, generate wealth, but also really reward your community user. And I think the second part was I really thought about what's originally made Ethereum successful, right? It was just this anyone can participate, low valuation, and you work for your bag. You literally work for your bag. And I think the last part was as founders, right? I think we have to ask ourselves, like, do you deserve the valuation? Really? Like everyone wants a high valuation because it make you feel good. Do you deserve it? I don't think I deserved it. The chain is not there, by the way. Like people like often ask you, Shuyao, you're so successful. I'm like, motherfucker, no, I'm not successful. The chain is not there. It's not noise you're seeing, right? So do you really deserve it? So all of this together, I was like, you know what? I really need to build a community. First of all, I need to give back to the community early on. I think that's the right thing to do. And the best way for me to do it legally and make sure that it's not just random people was through Echo.
Fantastic. I think answer to the question whether you deserve it, I think you yourself know very well whether you do or not and what it is. But again, I mean, if line gets you that kind of runway and that kind of money, most of the people choose to do that. So kudos on not doing what most of the people are doing.
I think the other part, which I think is unspoken in crypto, right, is who are your community people? I struggle this quite a lot because crypto communities are quite mercenary. They
Yeah.
love you when there's money in you and then they move to someone else. And I struggle this quite a lot personally. So I was like, okay, rather than just dancing with the community on like, oh, you might get token here and there, I'll just use the most straightforward way. This is that location. This is the lowest possible I can offer to you. The most I can offer to you is $3,000, one ETH, and take it if you want to. If you don't want it, don't. Right? I'm not forcing you. So it becomes a very transparent way to get skin back to the community, right? I'm not dancing with you. The moment you're dancing with community, like even if they're getting airdrop, they hate you. They're like, why are you doing this to me? Right? It's just like people who get airdrop, who farm chains, still don't have loyalty. So what I'm saying is like all this is best I can offer to you. So take it.
Oh, people who farm absolutely don't have any loyalty. And they're ready to scream on day one as to why their allocation is low compared to whoever else, right? I think that's a guaranteed way to lose. This at least you have a shot at, forming that community. So Finn from Abstract mentioned something very interesting. He said that, running campaigns at getting your narrative done on CT is not that difficult. Like I can outsource this to a few agencies and they will hire KOLs that but the moment the money is transferred to them, all the noise, like everything will go away. There won't be any mentions. And what is left after all of that is done, that is your community. So I think that was a unique way of putting it.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. So I remember when we first started our Discord last year in May, I knew everyone on Discord, right? Because we don't do Discord grinding. I think it's just, dude, it's just 2020. Let's not do Discord grinding. So I knew everyone. So I knew who stays through with us. It's beautiful. I also know people who came, now and be like, yo, I'm here for the long term, even yesterday. So I'm very active in our regional community. So I would just translate whatever language they're talking about. So we have a Korean community. I would just translate and I would just talk to them. And then we have another regional community, and the guy was like, "Oh, I'm here for the long term." I was like, "Motherfucker, no! Like we just started this community a month ago. What is long term? Don't fool me, right? I don't need you to sugarcoat. Like let's just go along the way and see if you stay for the long term."
Yeah, I mean, on day one, you can't say that I'm here for the long term, right? And because there's no way to verify that, right? Whether you are or not. So time will tell. All right. So in terms of mega thesis, right? I want to articulate it and I want you to tell me how wrong I am, right? So current chains, current L2s, whatever, have low throughput. There is scarcity of computational power, which means that not all the applications that in the real world can be brought on chain, whether those are high frequency trading operations, etc., they can't be brought on chain. So we build a crazy sequencer. We do a bunch of optimizations. We get rid of the Merkle Patricia tree. We build something from ground up, which is probably proprietary at this point. I don't know. And that lets you to scale to 100,000 TPS and boom, like you have a performant L2 at this point. Is that ballpark? Right.
We are a performance real-time blockchain.
Performant real time blockchain. All right. How important is it for teams to be frugal? Because I've seen people wasting money on, I don't know, things that they will never need.
I think it's basic. So I've been working for 14 years. So to me, operating a company like frugality is key. I think a lot of crypto companies don't care because getting money is very easy. So yeah, absolutely. It should not. And the other thing with being frugal is not just, expenses on events. It's really on headcounts. I hire people very carefully because I think I've seen being with consensus where the company scale from 100 people to 1,000 people and back to 200 people, back to 800 people, right? So being frugal is important, not just because of expenses, but who do you hire? So please don't scale too fast.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, I think that is something that even we as a company live by. We are like only six, seven full-time people, and we don't intend to hire unless we absolutely need to. And we are working weekends, and it's getting so crazy that, we can't really back this. So yeah, I think when is the launch? What are we looking forward to at this point?
Yeah, so I think I want to thoughts with the audience, right? When I decided to quit consensus to join MegaETH, and it was not the first time people asked me to co-founder of a chain. It was numerous offerings. The reason I only took MegaETH was because I think this is the end game of an EVM blockchain. I don't think you can build something faster than MegaETH. But technology doesn't matter on its own. It's really the application. So for the last 1 year, I did very little on community. No one actually has heard of MegaETH because I spend 90% of my time with builders. And I think without the builders, everything we do in crypto is kind of meaningless, right? Only until about 2 months ago, we started doing Echo, we started to build community. So I think the sequence of how I execute MegaETH kind of shows everyone of the DNA of our company, right? I think the DNA is to have very cool and interesting use case that everyone can be proud of to work in crypto. So I think my call to action to everyone is it's really difficult to believe in something when the money is flying around and price action moves. But after 7 years, I love this industry because I continue to meet with application builders who are creating new aha moments on chain. So if you're one of them, I really would love to talk to you. We're launching our testnet mid-February. You can come and experience the chain. It's fast, but also I think more importantly, the chain is fast is not enough, right? You must be building a business. Your application is a business. We're not here to rip a token. And I really think even if you want to make money, right, ripping a token in a short term will not make you money. You still have to vest. So even if you just want to make money, build something useful. And we're here to really discuss, business model, growth strategy. I'm very proud to be a therapist to our ecosystem builder as well. But yeah, I think it's hard to believe in something, but I think we must do. Otherwise, we should just be NPC, right? In American dream.
So I understand that Mega Testnet is coming out in February. Do you have any message for us, for builders who are planning to try things out?
Yeah, so for the last 1 year, we focused on the Mega Mafia projects. And the reason we had Mega Mafia was to work with select builders to kind of showcase how fast the chain can be and the novel applications. But as we gear toward testnet, we're going to open up to all the builders. So we have a program. It's called Mega Forge. You're forging into a civilization. That was my mentor model. Gonna open to everyone. So if you keep up to our Twitter account, we have a form for everyone to fill out. And the reason we ask people to fill out a form so we kind of understand the stage you're in. We can personalize how we support you guys. We'll also have a builders group chat where you can have access to my co-founders to ask any technical questions. So I really encourage people to keep an eye on our communication channels and join the Mega Forge. It's really where we directly interact with builders. And just one more thing, like people ask me, how do we support ecosystem builders, right? And I don't want to say like we don't support, but we're not gonna do your typical QT and like join on Twitter space, etc. I think those are not effective anymore. We're just really trying to personalize based on each team's use case. That's why it's gonna take some time for us to come back to you. But yeah, we welcome everyone to build with us.
Awesome. One more thing. I don't think you do grants like most of the ecosystems do. What is the rationale behind it?
So I think about projects like ecosystem project, they are building something because it's going to become a sustainable project, which means they will be able to make money, right? I'm one of the few people in Ethereum who hates public goods. I think it's beautiful that people have built public good. I don't think MegaE's core mission is to build public good. Our mission is to build profitable business. I like capitalism. So if you rely on a grant to survive, you should go to other ecosystem that has a shitloads of money. I'm very poor, but I'll make sure that if you build with me, you can build a sustainable business.
Awesome. I like when people admit they like capitalism. It's beautiful. In terms of applications, like what are the applications that would launch on day one? Like, is that plan ready? Like, can we know about it right now?
Yeah, so if you go on our website under builders, those are the Mega Mafia projects. Most of them will likely go on when we launch mainnet.
And Mega Mafia is people builders that you've been working with since a long time, right? I mean, probably for a year now.
For a year, yeah, for a whole year.
For a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Vic. Thanks. Thank you so much for spending time. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, I think I learned a little bit about cultures, a little bit about China, how people are different, and obviously a lot more about what I already knew about Megai. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.